Hey, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Kiran Kumar Boya, an undergraduate. In this video, you are going to know about what actual happiness is and does happiness is a problem. Before going into the video, please do subscribe my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon so that you will be notified when I drop a new video. Do you really think that happiness is a problem or problems will destroy our happiness? Write down your thoughts about happiness in the comment section so that I will get to know what real happiness is. We are all having problems in our day-to-day life. We often suffer for some reasons. We feel anxiety, we feel perplexed, we feel surprised, we feel contented, and also we feel love sometimes. Whatever makes us happy today will no longer make us happy tomorrow. Because our biology needs something more. A fixation on happiness inevitably amounts to a never-ending pursuit of something else. A new bike, a new sports car, a new house, a new relationship. This is why our problems are recursive and unavoidable. The person you marry is the person you fight with. The house you buy is the house you repair. The dream job you take is the job you stress over. Everything comes with an inherent sacrifice. I will tell you a story to understand this concept. So, let's dive into that story. About 2500 years ago, in the Himalayan foothills of present-day Nepal, there lived in a great palace a king who was going to have a son. For this son, the king had a particularly grand idea. He would make the child's life perfect. The child would never know a moment of suffering. Every need, every desire would be accounted for at all times. The king built high walls around the palace that prevented the prince from knowing the outside world. He spoiled the child, lavishing him with food and gifts, surrounding him with servants who catered to every whim. And just as planned, the child grew up ignorant of the routine cruelties of human existence. All the prince's childhood went on like this. But despite the endless luxury and opulence, the prince became kind of pissed off young man. Soon, every experience felt empty and valueless. The problem was that no matter what his father gave him, but it never seemed enough, never meant anything. So, late one night, the prince snuck out of the palace to see what was behind its walls. He had a servant drive him through the local village, and what he saw horrified him. For the first time in his life, the prince saw human suffering. He saw sick people, old people, homeless people, people in pain, even people dying. The prince returned to the palace and found himself in a sort of existential crisis, not knowing how to process what he had seen. He got all emo about everything and complained a lot. And as is so typical of young men, the prince ended up blaming his father for the very things his father had tried to do for him. It was the riches, the prince thought, that had made him so miserable, that had made life seem so meaningless. He decided to run away. But the prince was more like his father than he knew. He had a grand ideas too. He wouldn't just run away. He would give up his royalty, his family, and all his possessions and live in the streets, sleeping in dirt like an animal. There would starve himself, torture himself, and beg for scraps of food from strangers for the rest of his life. The next night, the prince snuck out of the palace again, this time never to return. For years, he lived as a bum, a discarded and forgotten remnant of society. The dog shit caked to the bottom of the social totem pole, and as planned, the prince suffered greatly. He suffered through disease, hunger, pain, loneliness, and decay. He confronted the brink of death itself, often limited to eating a single nut each day. A few years went by, then a few more, and then nothing happened. The prince began to notice that this life of suffering wasn't all that he was cracked up to be. It was not bringing him the insight he had desired. It wasn't revealing any deeper mystery of the world or its ultimate purpose. In fact, the prince came to know what the rest of us have kind of known, that suffering totally sucks. And it's not necessarily that meaningful either. As with being rich, there is no value in suffering when it's done without purpose. And soon the prince came to the conclusion that his grand idea, like his father's, was in fact a fucking terrible idea and he shouldn't probably do something else instead. Totally confused, the prince cleaned himself up and went and found a big tree near a river. He decided that he would sit under the tree and get up until he wake up with another grand idea. As the legend goes, the confused prince sat under the tree for 49 days. He won't delve into the biological viability of sitting in the same spot for 49 days. But let's just say that in that time, the prince came to number of profound realizations. One of those realizations was this, that life itself is a form of suffering. The rich suffer because of their riches. The poor suffer because of their poverty. People without a family suffer because they have no family. People with a family suffer because of their family. People who pursue worldly pleasures suffer because of their worldly pleasures. People who abstain from worldly pleasures suffer because of their abstention. This is not to say that all suffering is equal. Some sufferings is certainly more painful than other sufferings. But we all must suffer nonetheless. Years later, the prince would build his own philosophy and share it to the world, and this world be itself the first central tenet, that pain and loss are inevitable, and we should let go of trying to resist them. The prince would later become known as Buddha, the Gautami Buddha. And in case you haven't heard of him, he was kind of a big deal. There is a premise that underlies a lot of our assumptions and beliefs. The premise is that happiness is algorithmic, that it can be worked for and earned and achieved as if it were getting accepted to law school or building a really complicated Lego set. If I achieve X, then I can be happy. If I look like Y, then I can be happy. If I can be with a person like Z, then I can be happy. This premise, though, this is the problem. Happiness is not a solvable equation. Life is essentially an endless series of problems. The solution to one problem is merely the creation of next one. I am trying to say is, don't hope for life without problems. There is no such thing. Instead, hope for a life full of good problems. Here is a poem which I have wrote recently, and the lines goes like this. It's always hard to find the real meaning of life. Don't waste the real time by finding the purpose of life. Don't hope for life without the problems. Life is only enjoyable when we possess the problems. Miracles will happen if you have fortune in your fate. Until then, keep on collecting memories with zero hate. Live the life the way you got. Celebrate the rest, and happens a lot. Life has everything in its own way. We just need to live and sway.